All of them accidentally get trapped on a magical island where small animals have grown to enormous sizes, and the real problem is how to get out of that dangerous place. The adventure begins with a boy named Sean riding his motorcycle toward a radio station because he picked up an important signal he wanted to recover. What he was attempting was illegal. No ordinary person was allowed inside the station without permission, but Sean went anyway to trace the signal. He managed to detect it and was leaving the large radio station when police officers arrived and arrested him. Now he might face punishment. The officers questioned him to find his family, and when they arrived at his home they discovered that Sean had a stepfather named Hang, who used to be a Navy officer. When Hang learned everything about his son, he went to get him out. After signing papers and paying fines, he brought Sean home. It turned out Sean didn't accept Hang as his father, and the two never got along well from the start, though Hang repeatedly tried to make Sean realize he was his father and, despite being a stepfather, fully shoulder his responsibilities. Back home, Sean was visibly upset, holding a paper filled with many symbols. After Hang and his wife repeatedly asked why he had gone into the radio station, Sean finally said he had received a signal from his grandfather, who had gone missing years ago. Many believed the grandfather was dead, but Sean suspected he was still alive and was determined to find him no matter what. Hang was worried about how to help his son. Later, in Sean's room, he discovered the paper contained several different languages he couldn't understand and needed to decode. Hang, unable to see his son so troubled, came in and asked questions. Sean, angry but honest, said the signals were from his grandfather and that he believed his grandfather was alive and stuck somewhere. When Hang examined the signals, he revealed he'd been a Navy officer and might be able to help decode them, which convinced Sean enough to show him the paper. Hang carefully examined and began decoding. Once readable, the message clearly said the grandfather was alive and located on an island unlike any other in the world. Sean was thrilled. When he asked whether the location was mentioned, Hang said there might be coordinates, but the message referenced 3 ancient books that were still on their bookshelves. They fetched the 3 books, and on the top of each book was a map. When Hang layered the 3 maps together, they revealed a location, but it appeared to be in the middle of the ocean, and Hang doubted an island even existed there, having checked world maps. Still, Hang now had coordinates and was determined to go meet his father at any cost. Sean began packing to reach the island, while Hang warned him it could be extremely dangerous to go alone into the middle of the ocean. Sean told Hang plainly that if he didn't want to come, he should stay. Sean would find his grandfather no matter what. Sean had made up his mind to go, and as a father, Hank couldn't let him go alone. So, Hank talked with his wife and told her he planned to join Sean on the journey. He knew that if he stayed with Sean, he could protect him. After much convincing, Hank's wife finally agreed. Hank packed his belongings and set out with his son. Their first stop was a harbor, where they needed to rent a boat to reach the location in the ocean. Hank spoke with several sailors, explaining where they wanted to go. When one boat owner saw the coordinates, he was shocked and refused to take them, warning that it was the most dangerous area of the ocean. No one ever went there, and those who did never returned alive. He even said that no boat owner would agree to go there. After saying this, the man walked away, leaving Sean and Hank uncertain about what to do next. Suddenly, a man named Gabato approached them. Having overheard their conversation, he offered to take them to that location, but only if they paid him a large sum of money. Seeing no other option, Hank agreed. Gabato led them to his helicopter, saying it would be faster and safer than any boat. But as soon as he opened the helicopter door, a bunch of chickens ran out, making it clear the chopper was old and probably unreliable. Both Sean and Hank were doubtful it would even make it across the ocean. Hank decided he wasn't going to risk flying in it, until Gabato's daughter, Kailani, appeared. She was stunningly beautiful, and Sean couldn't take his eyes off her. It seemed like he fell in love at first sight. Without hesitation, he insisted they take Gabato's helicopter. Hank, understanding his son's emotions, agreed. Gabato quickly prepared the helicopter, and soon the 4 of them, Sean, Hank, Gabato, and Kailani, were flying toward their mysterious destination. None of them had any idea that this wasn't just an ordinary island, but a place filled with secrets beyond imagination. Ahead lay challenges that would test their survival skills in ways they couldn't predict. As they flew farther over the ocean, darkness surrounded them. Thick black clouds covered the sky, making visibility nearly impossible. Still, Gabato relied on his experience to keep control of the helicopter. Then, a massive storm began to form, trapping them inside. Giant tornadoes spun violently around them, making escape seem impossible. The wind grew so fierce that several parts of the helicopter started to break apart. The aircraft was heavily damaged and could no longer stay airborne. Caught in the storm, they plummeted down helplessly. After what felt like an eternity, they finally opened their eyes and found themselves lying on the shore of an unknown island. Checking the coordinates, they realized it was the same island they had been searching for. But how they got there, and how they would ever leave, remained a mystery. For now, they stood up, trying to collect themselves and figure out where they were. As they began to explore, Sean noticed a cave in the distance with a faint light glowing inside. They decided to follow the cave's path, hoping it might lead to a way out or some clue. On the other side of the cave, they discovered a breathtaking forest, a paradise of lush greenery, vibrant plants, and untouched nature. It looked so serene and beautiful, it almost felt like they had stepped into heaven itself. But the real truth was revealed only when they went a little farther. They saw animals around, but none of them looked normal. Butterflies that were once tiny were now gigantic in size. Moments later, an elephant appeared from behind, trumpeting loudly. But when Hank reached out and held it, they were shocked to see that it was actually miniature. That's when they realized a strange phenomenon. The animals on this island that were once large had become small, and the ones that were small had grown enormous. No one could understand this bizarre transformation, but they had to accept it as the truth. The group continued exploring and soon noticed smoke rising from the top of a distant hill. Sean immediately assumed it might be his grandfather and insisted they go there. Hank had no choice but to follow his son. The four of them moved deeper into the forest, completely unaware of the dangers lurking around them. As they carefully stepped across large stones, Hank suddenly felt his foot sink into one. It wasn't a rock at all but a massive egg. The sight startled him. If the egg was that big, how huge would the creature inside be? Before they could even think further, they looked ahead and saw a gigantic lizard sleeping nearby, so enormous that even a dinosaur would look small in comparison. Hank quietly signaled everyone to stay silent and leave before the creature woke up. But as they carefully climbed down from the eggs, Gabato accidentally stepped on one, cracking its shell and falling inside. Baby lizards began attacking him, but he broke through the shell and escaped. Unfortunately, the noise woke the mother lizard. Furious, she charged toward them, assuming they had come to harm her eggs. Hank shouted for everyone to run. The massive creature chased them through the jungle, and at one point, it looked like Sean would be caught and devoured. Hank tried to protect his son but was powerless against such a beast. Just as the giant lizard lunged toward them, a wooden spear struck it, stopping the attack. The man who threw it was none other than Sean's grandfather, Alexander. He had saved them all and scared the beast away. Overwhelmed with emotion, Sean ran and hugged his grandfather tightly. Alexander was just as happy to see his grandson and the others, but he quickly warned them that the forest was extremely dangerous. No one could survive there for even a single night. He led them to his hidden shelter, a treehouse built high above the ground, safe from wild creatures. When they climbed up, they saw it was a well-built, resourceful space, with everything Alexander needed to survive. Sean asked how he had ended up on the island. Alexander explained that he had set out to sea in his boat, but a storm caught him and dragged him straight to this island. With the few supplies that survived, he managed to build this shelter and survive ever since. When Hank asked how he was able to send signals, Alexander said he had constructed a small device from the leftover equipment on his boat. The device could transmit radio signals, which allowed him to contact Sean. Hank suggested they use that same device to call for rescue, but Alexander explained that the machine was now broken and would take a long time to repair, and they didn't have that kind of time to escape the island. For now, everyone was exhausted, so Alex told them to rest. He also assured his grandson that tomorrow, he would take him to a very special place. The next morning, Alex drove everyone through the beast forest until they arrived at a massive area, an ancient city spread across a wide expanse. Alex explained that humans once lived there long ago. But the island they were on wasn't what it appeared to be. As they entered the ruins of the ancient city, Alex revealed something shocking. The entire island rises above the ocean for several years and then sinks back beneath the sea. For now, it was above water, but no one knew how long that would last. Hang, while investigating the area, noticed that the nearby water had turned salty, which meant it was ocean water. Based on his calculations, the whole island could submerge again at any time. None of them knew how many days they had left. Alex confirmed Hang's observation but was worried. They had no resources, no boat, and no helicopter to escape. Suddenly, Sean stepped forward with an idea. He said that while researching, he had found a note in his grandfather's book mentioning a captain who once came to this island with a submarine. If that were true, the submarine might still be somewhere nearby. All they had to do was find it and use it to escape. Alex immediately asked where the captain's grave was, saying he might know the location and that a book buried near it could have information about the submarine. Without wasting time, they all set out toward the grave. After traveling for a while, they finally arrived. But the problem was that the grave had a small hole leading inside, far too narrow for most of them. Everyone stared, unsure who could fit. That's when Kale stepped forward and said, "I'm the smallest one here, so I can go inside easily." Everyone tried to stop her, but Kale slipped into the hole anyway. After crawling through for a while, she finally found the captain's body, with a book placed beside it. She grabbed the book, but suddenly, the ground began to shake violently, and the entire place started collapsing. Everyone outside panicked, especially Sean, who secretly liked Kale. They all worked together desperately to pull her out. Kale finally emerged but lost her balance and fell right onto Sean. For a brief moment, their eyes met, and Sean couldn't help but blush. But there was no time for romance. They had a critical mission ahead, with no guarantee of survival. When they opened the captain's book, they found a map inside. The map had directions that possibly led to the submarine. Following the map, they began their journey through dangerous terrain. The path ahead was full of life-threatening obstacles, but escaping was their only option. Along the way, they noticed that the local plants had evolved into massive hybrid forms. Trees that were once small had grown enormous. They knew danger lurked at every step, not knowing which creature might attack them next. As they kept moving, they suddenly saw golden dust falling from the sky. It looked like it was raining gold. Hang quickly realized from his research that a nearby volcano was about to erupt, and the gold particles were actually fragments of molten gold carried by steam. When Sean learned that there was so much gold around, he got excited and said they should collect as much as possible to become rich and never have to worry about money again. But Hang cautioned him, reminding everyone that they were running out of time. No one knew when the entire island would sink back into the ocean, so their top priority was to locate the submarine and escape as soon as possible. Alex agreed with Hang's plan and urged everyone to keep moving. The place was so strange that even the birds and insects had grown enormous, large enough to kill someone. Still, they moved quietly, following the map, until they reached a mountain. Beyond it, the path was unclear, and it seemed like they needed to get to the other side, which would take a lot of time and effort. Everyone felt frustrated and exhausted. That's when Alex suddenly disappeared behind some bushes and then emerged, riding a giant bee. Incredibly, he had learned to control the bees and told everyone they could continue their journey by flying on them. Sean and Hang were amazed to see more bees arriving. Alex taught them how to guide the bees safely, and soon everyone was soaring through the air, covering a long distance in a short time. They were thrilled, thinking they might finally reach the submarine. But what they didn't realize was that a deadly danger was following them. Huge birds, predators that fed on bees, started chasing them. These birds were much larger than normal, and as they dove toward the bees, they didn't even notice that people were riding on them, meaning they could easily kill everyone, including Hang's son. Determined to protect Sean, Hang tried to distract the birds by flying ahead. As he raced forward, an idea struck him, to lure the birds into giant spider webs nearby. The spiders in the area were also massive. Maneuvering skillfully, Hang and his bee zipped through dense bushes and narrow spaces the birds couldn't fit through. After a long, tense chase, Hang finally crossed the web zone, and the giant birds got trapped in the sticky webs, saving everyone just in time. However, during all the chaos, Sean fell from a great height and broke his leg, screaming in pain. Hang and the others rushed to help him. Seeing Sean's condition, Hang decided they should camp there for the night so Sean could rest and recover before continuing. Deep in the forest, Alex gathered food for everyone. He had lived there long enough to know where to find supplies. To lift Sean's spirits, Hang sang songs and did everything he could to make him feel special. Sean could sense his stepfather's care and began to feel closer to him, realizing he no longer hated him. Later that night, Kibito talked to his daughter, Kale, and asked if she liked Sean, since he had noticed some chemistry between them. Kale honestly admitted that she did like Sean but couldn't be with him. If they made it out alive, Sean would return to his normal life and focus on his studies, while her family was too poor to afford her education. She planned to stay on the island to help her father. Hearing this broke Kibito's heart. He felt guilty that his failures had kept his daughter from pursuing her dreams, even though she loved studying. Their emotional talk carried into dawn. The next morning, when everyone woke up, they saw the ocean's water level had risen dramatically. The island was on the verge of sinking. Sean and Kale suddenly noticed that Kibito was missing. Where had he gone? No one had any idea. At this moment, Kale guessed that her father might have gone toward the mountain to collect some gold. The night before, he had mentioned wanting to ensure she could study and that she'd never have to face a lack of money again. That meant he had risked his life, venturing into that dangerous place for her sake. Desperate to protect her father, Kale decided to go after him. Hang tried to stop her, saying he would come along because wandering through the forest alone was too dangerous. But Alex, thinking practically, pointed out that if they all went together, it would only slow them down and waste precious time. The island could sink any moment. So, Alex volunteered to go with Kale to find her father, while Sean and Hang would work together to locate the submarine and prepare for their escape. Hang agreed it was a smart plan, took a photo of the map, and left with Sean in search of the submarine. Meanwhile, Alex and Kale set out to find Kibito. On the other side, Kibito was indeed near the mountain, just as Kale had suspected. While digging through the ground, he spotted a glimmer of gold and tried to pull it out, but it was buried deep and firmly stuck. As he kept digging, he realized it wasn't just a small piece but an enormous chunk of gold, far too large for him to lift. He tried breaking off a smaller piece with rocks and sticks, but it was too solid to budge. Just then, Kale and Alex arrived. Kale ran to her father and pleaded with him to stop, telling him she didn't care about gold or money, she just wanted her family safe. But Kibito, filled with guilt, insisted that he wanted to give her a better future. He didn't want her to live the same struggling life he had. The two shared an emotional moment as Alex urged them both to leave before it was too late. Meanwhile, Sean and Hang continued following the map toward the submarine's marked location. When they arrived, they found the entire area submerged underwater. The only way to reach the submarine was by diving deep without oxygen masks, a nearly impossible and dangerous task. Thinking quickly, Hang came up with a plan. They would dive together, surface every few seconds for air, and continue until they found it. Taking a deep breath, both plunged into the cold water. After searching for a while, they finally spotted the submarine. It was old but still looked surprisingly advanced. They swam to it and tried opening the hatch, but it was jammed shut from years of rust and corrosion. They pushed and struggled but couldn't get it open, until Sean suddenly noticed a massive eel swimming toward them. Normally, eels were small, but on this mysterious island, even sea creatures had grown enormous. The eel was the size of a whale, with sharp, glowing eyes. Terrified, Sean and Hang pulled with all their strength, trying to open the hatch before the creature attacked. With one final push, the hatch finally gave way, and they rushed inside just in time. The eel struck the submarine but couldn't damage it and eventually swam away. Inside, the two took a moment to catch their breath, realizing they were safe, for now. Back on land, Alex, Kibito, and Kale followed the map, trying to find a way out, but the storm around them had become violent. The ground split open, thunder roared, and the sky turned pitch black. The water level kept rising fast, threatening to swallow the entire island. They knew they had only minutes left. In such a desperate situation, the key to survival was to find the direction of the ocean. Alex, being experienced, explained that they needed to check the soil. Wherever the ground felt moist, that's where the sea would be. They had to keep moving that way. He also noted that spider webs always formed facing the south, which meant following the spider's direction could also guide them toward the ocean or a nearby river. Luckily, Alex, Kibito, and Kale continued following the same path ahead. Meanwhile, we see Sean and Hank inside the submarine, but the submarine's battery had completely died, leaving the engine unable to start. They needed a strong power source to recharge it. That's when Hank came up with a brilliant idea, one that we could probably guess too. He told his son Sean that there were giant electric eels outside, and their bodies generated a massive amount of electricity. If they could somehow connect a wire to the eel's mouth, it could recharge the submarine's power cells in no time. It was a dangerous plan, but Hank knew it had to be done. He bravely went outside and lured the eel toward him. The moment it came close, he threw the wire into its mouth, and within seconds, the entire submarine came back to life. Now, there was finally a real chance of escape. On the other side, Alex, Kibito, and Kale had barely reached a corner of the cliff when huge rocks started collapsing around them, sending them plunging into the water. It looked like no one would survive. But just then, Sean and Hank appeared from below with the submarine. They pulled all three of them inside, saving their lives just in time. However, the danger wasn't over yet. Massive chunks of rock kept crashing down in front of their submarine. If Hank didn't control the situation perfectly, they could all be crushed. Hank quickly handed over the controls to Kibito and took charge of firing missiles at the falling rocks. Every time a huge boulder blocked their path, he blasted it apart, clearing the way. After an intense struggle, they finally made it out into the open ocean. Everyone was overjoyed, and Sean couldn't stop smiling after seeing Kale safe and sound. The love between them was clearly visible on their faces. Some time later, we see that everyone had gone back to living their normal lives. The best part was that Kale got admitted into a good university to continue her studies. Her father, Kibito, became quite famous after people learned about his miraculous return from the island. He started getting many clients and began giving boat tours to tourists. Sean and Hank had also become a happy and close-knit family, and even Sean's grandfather, Alex, now lived with them. One day, Alex handed a new book to Sean. This one was about traveling to the moon. With a smile, he asked, "So, are you ready for another adventure?" And just like that, our story ends on this exciting note.